Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Malcolm Rifkind. I've been invited to not only chair these proceedings, but begin the proceedings with a conversation with our most distinguished guest, the Prime Minister of Singapore. And it's a great privilege for Chatham House to be able to host your visit, and I know that all associated with Chatham House very much appreciate that. I should make clear that today's events, today's discussions at the Prime Minister's own request are not under Chatham House rules. They will be on the record, and please feel free, therefore, to proceed on that basis. I've got a couple of very preliminary points before we begin. I've said the event is on the record. I am informed that people can comment via Twitter using what's described here as #CHE events. That's capital CHE as in events. And I've asked you all, could you please put your phones on silent mode? Otherwise, all sorts of terrible things happen. We have an hour. We have to finish at 2 o'clock because of the Prime Minister's program. The suggestion is that our conversation, which you are invited to listen to, but not at this stage participate in, will be for about 25 minutes or so, and then we'll have hopefully up to about a full half hour for questions and answers. When we come to the Q&A, please introduce yourself and give a brief question so that we can get as many in as possible. Prime Minister, can we perhaps start our conversation, if we may? We are often told, we sometimes analyze ourselves, that this century is going to be Asia's century. And there are obvious reasons why people have come to that view. What I want to start is by simply asking you, from the perspective of Asia, how do you see this? Do you see this as, first of all, accurate, and secondly, an unalloyed benefit, or do you see problems and concerns associated with it?
I think it's a good thing that Asia is doing well and expecting to do well. I don't think it will be Asia's century in the sense that it's the only bright spot in the world. There are lots of other bright and energetic and successful peoples and societies, and they will have their play in the 21st century. But Asia has been progressing rapidly over the last few decades. And when you say Asia, you mean really the Pacific Rim periphery, China, Korea, Taiwan.
And India as well, of course.
And India as well, in a different way and perhaps in a more complicated path. And from Asia's point of view, and I think from the world's point of view, that's a good thing. Because if Asia were poor, the human misery is something, we're talking about billions of people, and the instability in Asia will affect the whole world. But I don't think Asia is the only story. The Africans are also very varied, but some of them are very much on the move. I think if we look at the Latin American countries, there's also a great range, and the ones on the Pacific coast, like Chile or Peru even, or Colombia, they are taking their economic development and progress very seriously. And that's the way it is. There's no central middle kingdom. It's a global network.
Thank you, but let me press you a little bit further on the Asian aspect of this dimension, because different things have been happening over the last few years. Some might want to suggest that it may indeed be Asia's century economically, but politically it's not Asia, it's China. And that China is not only economically growing at a dramatic rate, it's not only a very different country to what it was 20 years ago, but it's flexing its muscles, it's building its armed forces. And that appears to be creating a degree of nervousness amongst its Asian neighbors.
Well, there's a very big change in the landscape. I mean, when you see mountains grow, you're talking about millions of years. When you see a country rise, here you're talking about less than a century. And a powerful country, a continental power, will have commensurate defense forces, air, sea, and land. And I think that's only to be expected. What posture those forces take, whether you're benign, whether you're restrained, whether you have a hair trigger, whether you take an aggressive approach when issues come, that is a matter of policy and also of history and of the thrust of the zeitgeist in the country.
Aren't you perhaps becoming a little bit nervous? Because if one looks around the Pacific Rim, China's relationship with some of its most immediate neighbors is becoming pretty fraught. Traditionally with Taiwan, obviously, an unresolved issue, which in theory could become a military confrontation. With Japan, very poor relationships over the islands to the north. With the Spratly Islands claiming large amounts of territory or economic interest. And is that not something, certainly to the Philippines, to Vietnam, to Japan, seems to be not just a possible problem, but one that has become a real one?
I would take a more nuanced view. First of all, with Taiwan, which a few years ago looked like a real hot spot, I think things have stabilized considerably with this KMT government over the last couple of terms. And they've got a free trade agreement. They're discussing a services, or trying to get a services agreement through. And it is much less likely now that you're going to have some conflagration across the Taiwan Straits.
Forgive me, we said that about Russia up till a few weeks ago, and yet we've soon seen the use of military force in a way that very few in this part of the world expected or predicted.
Well, yes, but you're not going to war with Russia.
Not yet. Russia could be going to war with Ukraine very soon. Could be.
That's imaginable. But China, Taiwan, compared to 10 years ago, I think things are much better today. China, Japan, things are worse today. China, ASEAN, there is an issue of the South China Sea, which is a serious one with several of the ASEAN countries. But all of the ASEAN countries, in fact, want good relations with China. And other than the South China Sea, China is actually making a considerable effort to cultivate these countries and to get them on China's side. So it's a multifaceted relationship. Would we prefer China to be weak and poor? I'm not sure. A different set of problems will come.
Before we move on from this issue, just one final area that is relevant to what we've just been discussing is the question of the future role, not just the present, but future role of the United States. Because the United States is not Asian. In one sense, what is it doing as a guarantor of the defense of various countries in that part of the Pacific Rim? And yet what we have seen is many of your Asian neighbors anxiously looking to America for reassurance, which, if it's provided, implies that America has not just a short-term, but a long-term security presence in your part of the world. Is that something which you think is likely?
America is not an Asian country, but they have always been an Asia-Pacific power, and especially since the Second World War. And they've been present in the region. The Seventh Fleet has had an overwhelming influence. And it's not just missiles and aeroplanes, but the fact that the United States of America has a vested interest in the stability and security and prosperity of the region. And many countries are thankful for that.
Including Singapore?
Including Singapore, overtly and openly. And the Americans, this administration has said that it's pivoting to Asia. A pivot is not necessarily the best choice of words because you can pivot in, you can pivot out. So now we talk about the rebalancing towards Asia, and including forces. And we think that's a good thing because we believe that America actually has interests, has friends, has security concerns in Asia, and it's an important part of the world for America. And many of the countries in the region look forward to this continuing.
Do you ever see Asia and America having the same defense alliance that Europe and North America and the United States have?
Some countries in Asia have defense alliances with the US, Japan, Korea.
But they're bilateral, meaning
they're
collective.
bilateral. Multilateral, I think the situation is different. Today, if you were to start from scratch, you wouldn't create NATO in this form.
Thank you. Let's move on, if we may, to ASEAN. ASEAN's been around now for quite a long time. The first question I wanted to ask you, just your thoughts, what should we expect for the long-term future of ASEAN? Is ASEAN a potential Asian-European Union, or is it more an Asian NAFTA, or sort of purely dealing with trade and economic matters?
I think an Asian Economic Union is something over the horizon. And looking at where the European Economic Union is, we're not sure that we are aiming for that particular horizon. We are just trying to get somewhat closer.
Very diplomatic.
We are just trying to get somewhat closer together, recognizing that we are very different countries, very different histories, cultures, systems, values. But where our paths converge, we work together. And where they don't, well, we put them aside, we try not to collide. And one day we will try to do better, or our children will try to do better.
But are you talking in purely economic or trade terms, or do you see political cooperation, political positions, adopting common foreign policy issues of that kind being either available or potentially something you would like to see?
We talk
looked
more about more than trade and more than economics. We talk about security issues, we talk about social issues, we talk about cultural issues. And from time to time, we have taken clear stands on these. I mean, one very sharp example was on Cambodia in the 1970s and 80s, when ASEAN, then a smaller group, came together to resolutely oppose the Vietnamese invasion of Cambodia. And we had to stand beside very uncomfortable allies in that exercise, because the Khmer Rouge had a bad odor around the world, but they were the legitimate government. And you cannot chase out a legitimate government for no good reason, whether it's in Crimea or Cambodia. And we stood by that principle, and ASEAN held together. Today is more complicated because you're talking about 10 ASEAN countries and the interests diverge. And if you look at the South China Sea, some are claimant states, but some countries, one country is landlocked and adjacent to China, that's Laos. Another country has no littoral on the South China Sea, is in the Indian Ocean. That's Myanmar. So to have one single interest is much harder than NATO in the old days.
Is there an argument for saying that the countries of ASEAN should, on foreign policy issues, show solidarity to their fellow members when there is a problem with a third party?
That is the ideal. That's the ideal in NATO too, and in EU you try to approximate that, and we acknowledge that we're not quite so close yet.
What would you say ASEAN's priorities are at this moment?
The first thing is we are trying to conclude an conclude an ASEAN community, which is to be done by next year. And there's an economic community, there's a political community, there's a social community, and it's to be, and there are all sorts of components which go into that: free trade, movement of transportation, mutual recognition, political cooperation. And I think we'll probably get 3/4 or 80% of the way there, and then there'll be some work which will be done for the morning after.
When in Europe we talk about free trade, of course, we've moved from classic free trade into a single market with free services, free movement of labor, and so forth. Do you see that, I don't mean tomorrow or next year, but do you see that gradually as something that the ASEAN countries would be interested in, a completely open trading system, not just from goods, but also for services and free movement of labor? Is that
no, I don't think so. Even Britain doesn't think so.
Well, we do, no, not quite right. I mean, Britain has always championed and continues to champion a completely open Europe on trade and on services.
But movement of people.
Well, if it's for... I know what you're getting at. Not very subtle, I know what you're getting at.
No, we make no bones about it. We can't do that.
No, but no one is suggesting in the United Kingdom that we go back from a free movement for people who are genuinely taking up employment and so forth. The debate in this country is about what are called welfare tourists, people who are allegedly...
I accept that, but even genuinely seeking employment, if 100 million people came to look for jobs in Singapore, I would have a problem.
Be quite... no, sure. Sure. But the market suggests you don't get those numbers.
No, not at all.
No?
Today we have legally 1 million foreign workers in Singapore. Right. There's 1 foreign worker to 2 Singaporean people in the workforce. And we control those numbers, and we manage the ratios, and we have to watch the flows, because there's a limit to what the society can accommodate and what you physically can.
And these are people with their families, not just...
No.
Are these just foreign workers?
Well, some are allowed to come with families, some come as individual foreign workers.
Because, I mean, if they come with their families, the possibility is they stay permanently. If they
that becomes more complicated.
That becomes more difficult.
So we have immigration too, people who come and with families or without, and we allow them to become permanent residents or citizens, but those numbers are smaller. But it has to be a controlled flow. I mean, it's not a doctrinal thing with us. You used to make a doctrinal thing out of outflows from the Soviet Union, and people should be free to travel every time they want. And when the Americans met the Chinese, they made a doctrinal thing of it too, and said, you must let people go. And they made, I can't remember which president made this argument of Deng Xiaoping, and he turned and said, how many million do you want?
I once had that conversation with a Russian minister, a Soviet minister during that period, and we were making representations why they were not allowing their people to leave. And he said, but Mr. Rifkind, you in Britain, you have a controversial immigration policy. How would you like it if I interfered with your domestic immigration policy? And I said, well, there is a difference. He said, what is it? I said, in our case, they're trying to get in your case, they're trying to get out. Well, the conversation moved on to other subjects.
In our case, people will try to come in, and we will welcome talent, we will welcome workers who can contribute to our economy. We have to watch the balance.
Let's move on. What degree of optimism do you have about Myanmar? I mean, Myanmar is going through an extraordinary period in its history. Are the omens good? Are you very optimistic or just cautious about it?
It's a very long journey they have to take. They've taken several steps along the way. They're much better off than they were 3 years ago before their elections. I think that the leaders know that the old path was a dead end and that they have to move forward. But moving forward goes into quite complicated territory too. And once you've gone for open freedom of speech and democracy and elections, Pandora's box is open. You have 135 nationalities in Myanmar, not counting the Rohingyas. You have Muslims, you have Buddhists, and you have elections and votes. And you have to count your votes. And even Aung San Suu Kyi has to watch her Buddhist votes and can't side with the Rohingyas. So in that sort of a situation, we wish them well. I think they have a very difficult task ahead. I think the omens are good, but nothing can ever be certain.
Do you think the generals are now committed to a more pluralist, more democratic Myanmar? Or could it go into reverse?
Well, they could go wrong. The generals know that the old way didn't work. They know they have to hold elections. They hope that in a post-general incarnation, they can win them.
You think they will themselves be candidates for office? Is this the assumption?
That they were. They are. I
know, indeed. But do you think that will continue?
Surely they wish to stand for re-election.
And do you think there is anything that Singapore and other ASEAN countries can do to help the people of Myanmar, help the process of transition?
Well, there's foreign aid, which you are generous with. There's technical assistance, which we give them, and exchanges. And also just the gradual influence of interaction and seeing other peoples and knowing how other countries are doing things and how they stand and where Myanmar stands with them. And they stand 40 or 50 years behind because of self-inflicted tragedies. And they have a lot of catching up to do.
We've just got another 10, 12 minutes before we open up the discussion. Let's turn, if we may, to Singapore itself and where it is at the moment and what its future suggests. If you were asked, which you are being asked by me at the moment, what is Singapore's USP, its unique selling point? What would you concentrate on?
It's a first world system in a very complicated and non-first world part of the world. Things work, the country is stable, the society is cohesive, people are well educated, the government is incorrupt and efficient, and we deliver on what we promise and we try to head in a consistent direction over a long period of time. So if you come to Singapore and you want to do business, you can count on what we promise you, and what you see is what you get, and that's not bad.
You mentioned Singapore's reputation for not having corruption as a major problem, and that goes back to your father, Lee Kuan Yew, and the policies he implemented during his period as Prime Minister. That's a long time ago now, and people have often said at the time, well, you know, that's all very well, Lee Kuan Yew is a very unusual personality, this can't survive indefinitely. Are there strains that one sees, or do you think Singapore's very high reputation for having eliminated a very high degree of corruption, is that irreversible?
Nothing is ever irreversible, but I think these values and this system is fairly well entrenched. The expectations from the public are there, so if something is not quite right, you can be sure that somebody will sound the alarm, and in this day and age, there's no possibility of these things, something wrong being kept secret for very long. And within the system, there are mechanisms to make sure that if something is suspicious, it's investigated, and if something indeed is wrong, then consequences will have to follow. It doesn't mean that the system runs by itself. In the end, it's still people, and you must have very capable and very honest and very resolute people who will operate the system and follow through and keep it clean, even when it's politically inconvenient. And that's what we tell Singaporeans. You cannot assume that whoever happens to be the minister or the prime minister, all will be well because we've got all these rules and rule books and laws built up. It depends on what sort of person he is and who is going to make it work.
That's where you are now. What is it that made it possible? Because many countries have rules which on the face of it are just as good as Singapore's rules, but what Singapore has done is actually given substance to that. Now, what was it that made it possible in the first instance, and what is it that it makes it still deliverable, not just as a rule book, but as rules that people observe because the whole mindset has
we
changed?
started off with quite a good foundation because the British, as colonial masters, were the least evil of all the colonial masters.
We're grateful for the compliment, and I'm glad it's on the record.
We fought to get rid of them, but you did us some favors.
But Prime Minister, the same applied to 50 other countries in the Commonwealth, not all of whom have ended up with the success in dealing with corruption.
That is true, but in fact it was one of the considerations when the People's Action Party fought to win and did win the first elections in 1959, that you must win the first time, because by the second time the system may well have gone corrupt. Mm-hmm. And then we had an exceptional team of people who, with a tremendous sense of purpose and resolve, who kept it clean and who built the system to maintain it. Prevention of corruption laws, the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, the track record of investigating whoever is at fault, whether it's a policeman or whether it's a minister, and punishing them.
And if any other country or any other prime minister or president said to you, look, we'd like to follow your example, what do we need to do apart from the rule book? The rule book we understand. What else do we need to do?
Well, you can either progress slowly or you can have a revolution.
But you're a city-state. It's relatively a very small
so
country.
Our problem is easier.
That does make it easier.
Our problem makes it much easier. If you're a big country, it's very hard. You can have a national level government which works, and then the local governments become very complicated. Unfortunately, we only have one level of government.
Right. I want to ask you now a particular question. You have been Prime Minister since 2004, but your party has been in power for half a century.
Yes. But we've won elections along the way.
Well, I've noticed. I ask these questions from a strong sense of envy. The longest the party I belonged to was able to be in power for was 18 years under Margaret Thatcher and John Major. That seemed a heck of a long time at the time. Yes. And by the time we lost power in 1997, my wife had said if we'd won it, she'd have asked for a recount. No, that was after 18 years. Is it healthy to be in power for 50 years?
I think there are some advantages if you can keep the system.
If you're Prime Minister, I can see that.
You don't want to be Prime Minister for 50 years or even 18 years. You want a system where there's continuity and there's change within that continuity. I think for a small country, discontinuous change is disruptive and could be dangerous. And luckily for us, we have been able to keep the system renewed. It's not the same people who were present at the beginning in 1959 who are in charge now, but we've had several changes of the guard and move with the times, with the population. And whether we can do that, whether we can maintain that position of trust and confidence and dominance in the system over the long term, that depends on Singaporeans, and also on how well we acquit ourselves and we establish ourselves in our own rights, not just as heirs to this success, but creators and builders on what the previous generation has done.
But at your last general election, if I'm not mistaken, your opposition did much better than ever before and got some 40% of the popular vote.
Yes, that's right.
That means that in terms of voting preferences, they're not a long way away from perhaps one day overtaking you and taking power.
Well, I don't think you can draw straight lines like that. In politics, things never progress in a linear fashion. And in the end, people will have to decide in Singapore what government they want and whom do they want to run the government. And the opposition in the last election didn't stand to run for government. In fact, the contrary. They made a point of saying, we're not going to run the government, please vote for me.
You think that's why they got 40% of the vote?
I think that's part of the factor. No, that is part of the factor.
Why should Singapore be different in this sense? I mean, being blunt about it, any opposition that says, don't worry, we don't want to run the government, either you don't believe them, or there's some very odd thing going on.
Well, the
Why
odd
shouldn't
thing,
they want
the
to run
odd
the
thing that going on is that in Singapore, people actually know that the government generally is doing the right thing. But they'd like somebody to be there to put a bit more chili on the government's tail.
Okay, but I've mentioned that 40% voted for the government, but in terms of your electoral system, which
No,
is not
40% voted against
the government. I'm sorry.
In Britain, 40% votes for the government.
When we're lucky. We should be so lucky. We should be so lucky. But the fact is that there is nevertheless something that is less complimentary compared to the point you just put to me. 40% of the opposition voted for the opposition.
Yes.
But in a parliament of, 87 seats?
No,
the opposition won 7 or 8 seats.
The system is different. We have a first past the post system, like
we do.
Like you do. You mitigate that because in first past the post, home counties go Tory, Scotland goes Labour. We don't have Scotland.
You never know what might happen here.
So what we do have is really smaller than London, and it's uniform. We've made a point of making the different constituencies representative of a national mix, so you don't have Chinese constituencies and Malay ones. So it's a very flat political landscape, and if you tilt, you might suddenly have a complete change overnight.
Well, but
So
once every 50 years, it's not exactly overnight.
So therefore, the way the parliament has to be built up and composed is different, and we've evolved. We're first past the post, but we've topped up beyond the people who win the constituencies with non-constituency members, so that although the opposition won 6 seats, there are 9 opposition members, and we make sure that there's always a minimum representation of non-government members of parliament.
But a very serious point. We all know that if you have first past the post, it can sometimes mean that the government has a greater proportion of seats than its share of the vote justifies. That happens in many countries that have that system. In your case, because of the growth of support for the opposition, how tenable can that be in the longer term? Because if you have an opposition, let's say that consistently gets 35, 40, 45% of the population, but even with top-ups is restricted to about 10% of the seats.
Yes.
Isn't that not going to create deep growing resentment and need some political
Well,
reform?
there's a desire for more representation of voices in parliament, and so, in fact, beyond the opposition-assured seats, we also have nominated members of parliament who are neither government nor opposition, but they represent academia, unions, professions.
Not very democratic nominated
unions.
members of parliament.
You used to
we have the
them
House of
too.
Lords, but that's only one
There you
chamber.
are.
But that's not where the government comes from.
But the fact is, if you look at the way politics is played in Singapore, a lot of it doesn't happen in parliament because the opposition in parliament has decided it's politic for them not to propound policies or alternatives. They just snipe at the government from time to time, and when the election comes, you have the opportunity to make a fuss and rouse issues and argue again to be re-elected.